And the $10 billion goal we set in 2010 has now been exceeded. And now we will be aiming for 15 billion first and then 20 billion. Considering the current statistics, we believe that the momentum we have achieved will continue with $27.5 billion of volume. The Netherlands is the country that does direct investments first, and the Turkish entrepreneurs through more than 23,000 companies they established have now been employing more than 80,000 people, from energy to environment, from infrastructure to technology, from agriculture to finance. In all areas, we have opportunities to seize, and with Mr. Prime Minister, we are on terms to make more strides. Green growth and green transformation also have a priority in our common agenda. An important bridge in our relations is to do with the humanitarian dimension. The Turkish community living in the Netherlands protect their cultural identities and live in peace and welfare, and we attach importance to their participation to social life in all areas. Around 650,000 Dutch friends were hosted in Turkey last year. In case Turkey is included into the green category for traveling, I believe that we will be achieving the pre-pandemic figures and even go beyond these figures. The most recent developments once again show with no hesitation that Turkey's accession to the EU will bring about added value. Without surrendering to vicious interest calculations, the negotiation chapters are expected to start soon, as well as the customs union renewal, I believe. As I conclude, I hope that our meeting today will be auspicious for our relations, for our countries. And I would like to thank to Mr. Prime Minister Mark Rutte for his visit. I also would like to thank to his delegation. Thank you.
My host for this extremely warm welcome today in Ankara. And it's a pleasure to be back in Turkey again. We have a long and important bilateral relationship. Our relations go back more than 400 years. And what's more, we are key economic partners. As you mentioned, we have seen a growth in bilateral trade from 8 billion to 11 billion. Our aim is to go to 20 billion with an intermediate goal of 15 billion. And the Netherlands is the biggest foreign direct investor in Turkey. So there is a lot to work on, and 3,000 Dutch companies being active in this country. But of course, today was focusing not only on our bilateral economic relationship, it was focusing on what is happening in the world, because we are working closely together also at the multilateral level. Of course, we are both members of NATO, and we are both looking forward to the NATO summit, the extraordinary NATO summit coming up on Thursday. I could say here, and I want to say here, that Turkey is of enormous political and military importance to the alliance. And of course, this country is also an important partner for the European Union. Indeed, as you mentioned, we talked at length about the situation in Ukraine. We both condemn the Russian invasion. As President Erdogan has said, this is a heavy blow to regional peace and stability. And I fully agree with that assessment. By invading its neighbor, Putin has violated Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And this is totally unacceptable. The violence being inflicted in Ukraine on Putin's orders is merciless, and there are many innocent civilians among the victims. And we are seeing evidence of this every single day. Take the horrendous images of the relentless shelling of Mariupol, an assault that serves no purpose other than to terrorize the civilian population. For us, as a Western European country, the war in Ukraine feels relatively nearby. But it is much closer here in Turkey, which, like Russia and Ukraine, borders on the Black Sea. Turkey is playing a key role in relation to this conflict. And I'm very pleased that President Erdogan has indeed taken on that role. So I'd like to thank you once again, but also the members of your cabinet, for your diplomatic efforts to help resolve this terrible conflict. Turkey also has an important responsibility with regard to the passage of vessels through the Bosporus under the provisions of the Montreux Convention. And here I also want to commend that Turkey takes this role very seriously. You are doing that. You are holding back on the ships which have an end destination somewhere on the Black Sea, and I think that's crucial. So Turkey is taking its responsibility, and more than that, not only with regard to the war in Ukraine, but in other areas too. For instance, during the Syria crisis in 2015 and 2016, Turkey took in large numbers of refugees, partly on the basis of solid agreements we made at that time between Europe and Turkey. In fact, you still take in more refugees than any other country in the world. And I want to say that we are very grateful to President Erdogan for that. On Thursday, I'm looking forward to our discussions we will have at the NATO summit. But I want to testify here tonight that our talks have deepened our relationship, which was already strong economically, bilaterally, but also multilaterally, and particularly focusing so much on Ukraine. And again, thank you for the leadership role you are taking in trying to bring this terrible conflict, this terrible aggression by Russia in Ukraine, to a negotiated end. Thank you for that. And again, thank you for hosting me with this. I'm really, really impressed. Thanks.
Thank you. Evet, şimdi öncelikle misafirlerimize
Now we will be leaving the floor to our guests
İki soru
for questions. We will be receiving two questions from the Dutch press and two questions from the Turkish side. The floor is now first given to the Dutch press.
Mr. President, I have a question for the Dutch Prime Minister. I'd like to ask him, we are seeing a very large increase in the violence in the war in Ukraine. I would like to ask him what he thinks can be done to stop that and what he thinks Turkey should do to stop that violence. Thank you.
Well, Turkey is doing everything what they can do. Turkey is playing a very crucial role. It's one of the few countries outside Germany, France and the US who has bilateral talks both with Putin and with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. And at the same time, Turkey has clearly condemned the Russian aggression in Ukraine. So Turkey is completely credible and still can play that role with both countries. And it's one of the few open lines we have with both. And in that sense, I can only say that we are fully supporting Turkey on that path. They are negotiating, trying to negotiate also through Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu with both Ukraine and Russia. And we have to see where that brings us. But at least they are trying and we are supporting them in trying. The latest signals we are getting out of Ukraine are really terrible. The shelling, the cluster bombs, the artillery fire on innocent victims is continuing. Mariupol, but also Kiev and other places in Ukraine, we all have seen the images. And that is why we will continue putting pressure on Russia with sanctions, putting pressure on Russia by supplying arms, material for Ukraine to defend itself, continuing supplying humanitarian support and medicines. We will continue doing that. And at the same time, we also have to be very clear that a no-fly zone or boots on the ground from NATO in Ukraine is not possible, because that will bring us in a direct confrontation with Russia between a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia.
Evet, ikinci soru.
Yes, the second question,
Mitra
please.
Nazar, a Dutch public broadcaster, NOS. One of the, again, a question to Prime Minister Rutte. One of the topics that is being discussed amongst NATO member states now is sanctions on Russia. What kind of sanctions, how much? Turkey is a country that has not imposed sanctions on Russia. Do you think Turkey should join the sanctions? And is there a good reason for Turkey not to?
Well, Turkey is implementing the UN sanctions, so that's what they are doing. And of course, Turkey is in a special position because of the geographical spot on the world map. And the fact that they also, of course, have their dealings with Syria at the moment. So yes, of course, we would very much favor for Turkey to implement all the sanctions. But I think we also have to be happy with the fact that Turkey is playing now its diplomatic role and its leadership role in trying to end the conflict.
Thank you. Evet, Türk tarafı.
Esra Nehir,
The
Habertürk
floor is
Televizyonu.
now given to the Turkish press. Esra is my name. You will be paying a visit to Brussels within the framework of a NATO Extraordinary Leaders Summit. You are also expected to hold bilateral talks, Mr. President. What will you share with your counterparts? And you also voiced some concerns about a NATO alliance. Have you made that criticism in terms of cooperation? Mr. President, could you comment on these? Thank you. Thank you very much. You have already yourself given the answer for that. Of course, one more time we will be sharing that with NATO member states and reiterate that if we are all NATO members and together in NATO, then we have to, in the full scope, show our solidarity. In particular, the steps to be taken forward as regards defense industry. We, as NATO member states, need to stand in solidarity. As a matter of fact, in the world, a defense product is not produced on a standalone basis. Some components are brought together and some actions are taken in the defense industry in that direction. Indeed, in the Russian-Ukrainian war, we have seen that. And from this point on, who knows what we will see where. In Libya, we saw that. In Azerbaijan, we saw that. However, we hope that we will have a world where none of this takes place, and we can establish a world, build a world where peace prevails. And NATO is hopefully the organization that takes the biggest part in that. Thank you. From A News, my name is Ece, Mr. President. My question is to you. The mines that have now been moving from the Odessa Gulf now to create a concern that they would threaten the people in the region there. Have you talked about that during your meetings, Mr. President? Yes, this is an issue addressed. Our National Defense Ministry is going to do whatever necessary. You should have no concern. Thank you very much.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, alongside with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, finishing up a post-meeting press conference saying that the two sides focused on the conflict in Ukraine. The Turkish president said that he continues with efforts, with talks with both sides, with the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, as well as Russia's President Vladimir Putin for the two sides to agree for a ceasefire. Let's bring in our diplomatic correspondent, Andrew Hopkins, who has been following this post-meeting press conference. Andrew, what were some of the major takeaways for you?